When you hear the name John Wycliffe, you probably think religious reformer, right? But what if I told you his biggest impact is actually on the very words I'm speaking to you right now? Yep. Today, we're going to dive into the incredible story of how one man's radical idea to translate a book literally helped create the English language as we know it. Seriously, try to put yourself in this world for a moment. Imagine all the important stuff. The laws that govern you, your sacred texts, all of it was written in a language you couldn't possibly understand. That's not some dystopian future. For pretty much everyone in 14th century England, that was just life. So, what was going on? Well, you had this huge linguistic divide. On one side, you had Latin. It was the language of, well, everything important. The church, the government, all the scholars. It was the language of power, period. And on the other side, you had English, the language of the people. But it was seen as kind of crude, not really suitable for big, serious ideas. All right, so that's the world we're stepping into. A world where English, as we think of it, just didn't have any real power or prestige. And this wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a massive wall. If you couldn't read Latin, you were completely locked out. You couldn't access the core texts of your faith or engage with the big ideas of the day. All that knowledge, all that power, was kept under lock and key by a very small group of people. But then, someone decided to shake things up. Big time. His name was John Wycliffe, and he had this truly radical idea. What if we took the most important book in the entire world and translated it into the language that everyone actually spoke? So in the 1380s, that's exactly what he and his followers did. They took on this absolutely monumental project, the very first complete translation of the Bible from Latin into English. And you can't overstate how rebellious this was. It was a huge act of scholarly defiance.
Now, he didn't do it all by himself, of course. He had this whole crew of followers, known as the Lollards. And these guys were crucial. They didn't just help with the super tedious work of translating, they did the dangerous part, hand copying and secretly passing around these new English scriptures.
And the effect? It was like a bomb went off. All of a sudden, for the first time ever, regular people could pick up a Bible and read it for themselves. The power to interpret Scripture was yanked away from the institutional church and handed directly to ordinary people. But here's the thing. The impact went way beyond religion. This one act of translation started a chain reaction that would change the English language forever, probably in ways Wycliffe himself never even saw coming. Think about it like this. English started out as the language of the common folk, what you'd hear in the market or out in the fields. But by using it to translate the Bible, Wycliffe basically proved it could do so much more. He showed everyone that English was sophisticated enough to handle deep, complex, spiritual ideas. It was like English got a major promotion. And that's the absolute game changer right there. This whole project made English legitimate. It wasn't just the language of the market anymore. Suddenly, it was the language of the soul. It became a language worthy of literature. And it gets even better. It wasn't just about using English, it was about how they used it. Wycliffe and the Lollards developed a whole new style of writing that would end up being incredibly influential. What's so wild is how modern it feels. Their number one goal was just clarity. They wanted people to actually understand what they were reading. So they wrote in a style that was simple, direct, and easy to follow. No fancy, confusing stuff, just pure, clear communication. And Wycliffe used this new, powerful tool for everything. He wasn't just translating. He was writing his own essays and sermons in this same plain English, calling out corruption in the church. He basically weaponized the common language, turning it into a tool for public debate and getting his ideas out to way more people. Okay, so what does all this add up to? What's the real legacy here? Well, remember that stone he dropped in the pond back in the 1380s? Those ripples are still spreading today. They often call Wycliffe the morning star of the Reformation, and it's such a perfect nickname. Think about it. The morning star shows up just before the sun rises. In the same way, Wycliffe's work came just before the dawn of a massive new era, not just for religion, but for the English language itself. And you can literally trace a straight line from Wycliffe's Bible to some of the most important books in English history. His clear, simple style was a huge influence on William Tyndale a century later. And Tyndale's translation, that became the foundation for the big one, the King James Bible. So much of that iconic text has its roots right here. So when you really boil it down, it's this. The language you and I are using right now, its structure, its rhythm, it was fundamentally shaped by a decision someone made over 600 years ago, a choice to trust people with knowledge in their own tongue. And that leaves us with a pretty big question for our own world, doesn't it? Wycliffe tore down the wall between complex Latin and the everyday person. So what are our Latins today? What walls of jargon in science, in law, in technology are just waiting for someone to come along and translate them, unlocking all that knowledge for everyone?